This video is going to give you some more information about the eye and to help explain some of the things in the book. So we're going to start off by following the path of light through the eye and kind of go over the basics of how you see. So if we think of a ray of light, light enters your eyes, and the first thing that the light is going to pass through is your cornea. So the cornea is the clear front part of your eye that's like the window to the eye that lets the light in. And some interesting things about the cornea, it has the most pain receptors of any part of your body, but it's also the fastest healing part of anything in your body. After the light goes through the cornea, it passes through that aqueous humor that fills the anterior chamber. Then you go through the pupil. So the iris, remember, is the color part of your eye. Like if your eyes are brown or blue or green, that's your iris. The iris is a muscle. The hole in the center of your iris is your pupil. So depending on how bright the light is, your iris adjusts the size of your pupil. So if you're out in bright sunlight, you don't want to let too much light in and hurt your eyes, so your iris will make the pupil small. If you're in dim light, you need to let more light in, so your iris makes your pupil big. So the light's going to pass through the pupil, and the size of it depends on your iris. So right here, this is iris. So here and here, because this is a cross-section side view, is iris, and you can kind of see right here is the hole in the middle of it. That's the pupil. So the light's going to go through the pupil, and then you have your lens. Your lens is what will focus the light, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The lens focuses the light, then it continues through, and you're going to go through the vitreous humor, which is what fills your posterior chamber. And remember, posterior means back, anterior means front. And then the light lands on your retina. This is where your photoreceptors are, your rods and cones. So this is the part that sees. This is where you're actually going to turn that light into a nerve signal, and then that nerve signal is going to go through here, your optic nerve, and if you remember the parts of the brain, it's going to go to the occipital lobe of your brain. So that's an overview of how light gets into your eye, and then you turn it into a nerve signal and you send it to your brain. Next, let's look at focusing. So remember, the lens is what focuses the light. So here's your lens. Here's your lens. Okay, sometimes you are looking at something far away. Sometimes you are looking at something close. So the top picture here shows something far away. If you are looking at something in the distance, you want your lens to be relatively flat. If you compare the top and the bottom picture, here in the top, the lens is flat. Well, remember that ciliary process, or the ciliary body that attaches to the lens? That's right here. When you look at something far away, the ciliary body relaxes. It's muscle, it's smooth muscle. And when it relaxes, it moves backward in the eye. It moves away from the lens. And it's attached to the lens by ligaments. So when it moves away from the lens, it pulls those ligaments, and that pulls the lens flat. And I know this is kind of counterintuitive. You don't think about muscles pulling it when they're relaxing, but that's what happens in the eye. Then when you look at something near, that ciliary body contracts. And when it contracts, it moves forward, closer to the lens. And by moving closer to the lens, those ligaments go slack. It's no longer pulling on the lens. And the lens naturally wants to be round. Think of like a rubber band. If you pull it, it stretches out. But then when you stop pulling it, it springs back. So the lens will automatically spring back to round. So your lens is like a piece of elastic. Now you're like, think about the waistband in a pair of shorts. You can stretch it out, and then when you stop stretching it, it springs back. That's how your lens is. So that's how you adjust for far and near vision. Then if we look at some problems you can have. We'll start, the top eye here is just normal vision. So this one is called emmetropia. So this eyeball is here just to give us something to compare to. So you can see the light comes in, goes through the cornea, it goes through the lens, and the light focuses on the retina. Okay, then you can be nearsighted or farsighted. So nearsighted is myopia. This means that you can see near, but things that are far away are blurry. So compare this eyeball to the emmetropic eyeball. Well, if you notice, see how this eyeball is long? So if you're nearsighted, the eyeball is too long. And because it's too long, the light focuses before the retina. So this causes anything far away to be blurry. And you correct this by having a concave lens. So here it's dented in, that's the concave. So your glasses or your contacts would be concave. The other situation is to have hyperopia, which is farsighted. This means you can see far, but near is blurry. So if you compare this eyeball to the normal one at the top, the eyeball is too short. And so the focal point of the light is not until after the retina. The light is not yet focused when it hits the retina. And this causes near things to be blurry. So this is corrected with a convex lens. So here you can see this lens is convex. Another situation that there's not a picture for it, but you may notice that as people get older, they need glasses. Pretty much everyone over the age of 50 needs glasses. And the reason for that is presbyopia. So back up here, remember how the lens has to spring back to being round in order to see near objects? Think about you yourself or someone you know who's in their 40s. This is when presbyopia usually starts to occur. You have to hold things farther and farther away to be able to see them. Think about like going out to lunch with your parents or grandparents and they hold the menu out far away. Or sometimes people complain, my arms aren't long enough. They get a text message on their cell phone and they have their arm out straight as far as it'll go, holding things far away to be able to see. In presbyopia, near gets blurry. So the lens is like a piece of elastic. As years go by, elastic loses its ability to spring back. Think about a pair of shorts with an elastic waistband. After so many years, that elastic wears out and the waist in your shorts won't spring back tight anymore, or an old rubber band, right? That's the same thing that happens with the lens. The lens no longer springs back to being round. So just like any piece of elastic with your lens, as it gets old, when you go from far and it's pulled back to looking at something near and you stop pulling on it, it just stays flat. It doesn't spring back to round. So that's what happens when you get into your 40s and your 50s and you start to need glasses. The lens loses its elasticity. And the last thing I want to do here is clear up a common misconception. If you ask people what's perfect vision, most people will say 20/20. That is not true. 20/20 is average vision. So if somebody's going around bragging, I have 20/20 vision, they're bragging about being average. In humans, about the best vision you can get is 20/13. So I want to explain these numbers and what they mean. So 20, the first number, is how far you stand from the chart. So the standard is to stand 20 feet from the chart. The second 20 is the average person. So 20/20 vision means that you and an average person both stand 20 feet from the chart. Let's look at right here, 20/40. That's below average. If you have 20/40 vision, let's say here's the chart. You stand right here 20 feet away. The average person can go way back here. The average person can stand 40 feet away and read the same line that you can read only from 20 feet. So 20/40 is below average. An average person can stand 40 feet away and read this line. You have to be 20 feet away in order to read that line. You have to be closer to the chart than the average person. Let's say 20/50. If your vision is 20/50, here's the chart. Here's you, 20 feet away. The average person can be 50 feet away. So the average person can come all the way back here at 50 feet and read that line. You have to be at 20 feet to read that line. The average person can step all the way back to 50 feet and still be able to read that line. Let's look at something above average. Let's look at like the 20/15. If your vision is 20/15, here's the chart. Here's you, 20 feet away. Notice you are always 20 feet. The first number doesn't change. The average person has to be up here at 15 feet in order to read that line. So you can stand 20 feet away and read this line. The average person has to step forward 5 feet and get closer to the chart in order to read that same line. If you had 20/10, which, like I said, about the best a human can get is 28 is the best that's possible in humans. 20/10 is really rare. But say you're some rare, amazing person with supervision and you have 20/10. Here's the chart. Here's you, 20 feet away. Again, you never move. You are always at 20 feet. The average person has to come all the way up here to 10 feet in order to read that line. So you can read from 20 feet what the average person can only see if they're 10 feet away. And 20/8 is the limits of human vision. So there's some information for you about the eyes, and hopefully now you understand what 20/20 means.